Not every Ford creation was destined for the showroom. Over the decades, the company has built machines in secret, tested them behind closed doors, and then locked them away before the public ever knew they existed. These were not design mock-ups or hollow concept shells. They were real, running cars that could have been sold, if only they hadn't been stopped by regulations, safety concerns, strategic decisions, or the simple fact that they were too wild for everyday roads. Some were banned because they were dangerously fast, others because they broke emissions laws, and a few were simply so far ahead of their time that there was no market ready to buy them. Today, we'll open the vault and explore 9 Ford cars that never made it to mass production. And why? 1984 Ford RS200. In the mid-1980s, Group B Rally was the most dangerous form of motorsport in the world, a place where manufacturers were encouraged to push engineering to the absolute limit. Ford had been struggling to keep up in rallying, so they started from scratch with the RS200, a purpose-built mid-engine, all-wheel drive monster designed purely to win. Powered by a turbocharged Cosworth engine producing over 450 horsepower in competition trim and weighing just over 2,300 pounds, it was explosively fast. The street versions were detuned to around 250 horsepower, but even that was enough to make them unruly on public roads. When a series of fatal crashes led to Group B's cancellation in 1986, the RS200's career was cut short. Only 200 road-going units were built, and today they are highly prized collector's items, a relic of the moment motorsport's ambitions finally went too far. 1965. Ford GT40 Mk1 Street. The GT40 was born from Henry Ford II's personal vendetta against Ferrari, and it became one of the most dominant race cars in history, winning Le Mans 4 years in a row. But Ford also attempted to make a street-legal version of the Mk1, creating around 30 examples. These cars kept most of the race car's rawness: extremely low seating, blistering heat in the cockpit, poor visibility, and a stiff ride. While they offered small concessions like leather seats and basic carpeting, they were still far too extreme for daily use. New safety and emissions regulations in the late 1960s made them difficult to certify, and the cost of ownership was high. Today, these rare road-legal GT40s are among the most valuable Fords ever made. 1985 Ford Sierra RS500 Cosworth. Developed to dominate touring car racing, the RS500 was a limited production evolution of the Sierra RS Cosworth. Built in collaboration with Aston Martin Tickford, it featured extensive engine upgrades, improved aerodynamics, and chassis enhancements. While the road version was officially rated at 224 horsepower, race cars produced well over 500. Unfortunately, its aggressive exhaust note, lack of refinement, and non-compliance with emissions laws in several markets meant that it was banned or restricted in many countries. Only 500 were made,
time coming up on the halfway mark for Peter Brown. It's good. Oh, is it good? 1:11.56
its on-track record cemented its reputation as one of the most effective Group A machines ever built. 1970. Mercury Cougar Eliminator. Boss 429. The Mercury Cougar was marketed as a more refined alternative to the Ford Mustang. But in 1970, a prototype was created that combined the Cougar's styling with the most formidable engine in Ford's arsenal, the Boss 429. This massive NASCAR-derived V8 was capable of enormous power, but its installation required heavy modifications and added significant cost. Rising insurance premiums, new emissions laws, and the looming oil crisis convinced Ford that the project was unviable. Only one confirmed example survives, making it one of the rarest muscle cars in history and a reminder of how quickly the golden age of American performance came to an end. 1982 Ford EXP Turbo Prototype. The Ford EXP was introduced as a sporty two-seat coupe based on the Escort platform, but its modest performance left enthusiasts underwhelmed. To fix this, Ford experimented with a turbocharged version that significantly improved acceleration and top-end speed. However, early 1980s turbo technology was expensive to certify for emissions, tricky to make reliable, and prone to handling issues due to torque steer in the front-wheel drive layout. In the end, the Turbo EXP never reached production, and only a handful of prototypes were built before the idea was quietly dropped. 1973 Ford Falcon XB GT. While American buyers were dealing with tightening regulations and declining muscle car performance, Ford Australia was producing one of the most aggressive muscle coupes of the era, the Falcon XB GT. With a 351 Cleveland V8, wide stance and rugged build, it was perfectly suited for Australian roads. But it didn't meet U.S. safety and emission standards, and importing it would have been costly. It became famous worldwide thanks to its role in the Mad Max films, and today, enthusiasts import them as rare collector's cars under special exemptions. 1971 Ford Capri RS200. Built by Ford of Germany for European touring car racing, the Capri RS2600 was a lightweight, agile coupe powered by a high-revving, fuel-injected V6. It won multiple championships and was highly respected for its handling and balance. However, it was never sold in the U.S. in its full performance form due to emissions regulations, safety requirements, and fears it would compete with the Mustang. As a result, American buyers only saw detuned versions, while the real RS2600 remained a European secret. 1989 Ford Probe GT AWD Turbo Prototype. In the late 1980s, Ford explored the idea of turning the Probe into a turbocharged, all-wheel drive, rally-inspired sports car. The prototype featured a significantly upgraded engine, a sophisticated AWD system, and suspension tuned for high performance. It could have competed with the likes of the Audi Quattro and Mitsubishi Galant VR4, but the costs were too high and the market too uncertain. Ford canceled the project before production began, leaving only a few prototypes that never reached the public. 2004 Ford GT90. Officially labeled a concept, the GT90 was nonetheless a fully functional hypercar. Built on a modified Jaguar XJ220 chassis, it housed a quad-turbocharged V12 producing 720 horsepower and could theoretically exceed 220 mph. It was a technological showcase featuring advanced aerodynamics and futuristic styling. However, it was far too expensive to produce, would have required extensive safety modifications to be road legal, and generated so much heat that parts of the car could become dangerously hot. It remained a one-off showpiece representing a vision of what Ford's supercar future could have been. Some of these cars were banned because they broke laws. Others were banned because they broke the limits of what was reasonable or safe for the roads of their time. All of them, however, prove that Ford has never been afraid to push boundaries, even if the result was a machine the world wasn't ready to handle.